Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I'm going to apologize in advance for the confusion of this call. I've been slammed with calls, texts, communications, emails from all over the place, talking about what's going on in Iraq, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in this country with regard to the lame duck session. So I've got a lot of information here. I've got pieces of paper and stick'ems everywhere. I'm going to try to piece this thing together. So again, I apologize for, what might be a little bit disjointed, but I'm going to do my best because, like I said, I'm coming from a lot of different directions today. And today, by the way, is December 7th, which is the 81st anniversary of Pearl Harbor, which was an important date in history. And we're actually living in historic times, although people don't tend to realize that at the time. It's only when you look back retrospectively that you see the history involved in a particular time. And I kind of I'm of the opinion that a few years down the road, people are going to look back at the last couple of years as being very historic, and things can go a couple of different ways, and they're not all good. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into today's call. We're here primarily to discuss the situation in Iraq and the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi Dinar. So to the extent that other issues have mitigated against that, I'm going to try to draw that in. But there is a lot going on, so I'm just going to kind of bullet point all of this. First, we've been told that we cannot possibly see the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar so long as there are currency auctions in Iraq. Well, we know that the currency auctions have subsided substantially, although we can't really say that they've stopped altogether. But currency options, investment in international currencies, currency arbitrages, and the like are all very, very complicated and nuanced, and they're difficult for people to understand. So I want to touch very briefly on the auctions and what's going on. We need to go back to how all of this began. And, of course, the auctions began after the removal of Saddam Hussein and putting the dinar into a program rate. When that happened, of course, the U.S. dollar became vital for Iraq's economy. And in order for the Iraqi government to acquire the dollars they needed, they had to use the one asset they had, and that was oil. So Iraq had set up a Federal Reserve account with the Bank of New York, which drew on Iraqi oil reserves. Now, at the time, they'd worked out a deal where the United States got oil credits, $32 a barrel. I don't know, and I didn't have time to try to track that down to see where we are today, but the point was, in return for freeing Iraq from the grip of Saddam Hussein, the repayment for the cost of that was given to us through the oil credits and the ability to purchase oil on the global market at reduced market price. So in exchange for purchasing the oil at, again, a reduced market price, literally pallets of $100 bills were flown to Baghdad and to the Central Bank of Iraq. And the bank then had daily auctions to the Iraqi the 8 regional banks, as well as other large entities that were in the position to purchase the dollar with the dinar. Now, of course, as we speak right now, the government of Iraq has nearly 100 billion USD in reserve. So they're certainly in a position to sell dollars if they need or want to, but that's not really necessary right now. Much of the 3-0 currency has been collected, and a few years ago, when the dinar devalued and it's dropped all the way down to $14.60 against the U.S. dollar, people were disheartened by that. My view at the time, and I believe I was correct, is that the purpose of that was to collect as much of the provisional 3-0 currency as was possible, and that's basically what's been accomplished. So the argument that we cannot proceed with the revaluation, or at least the reinstitution of the dinar, as long as there are the auctions. Well, the auctions are pretty much off the table. The second issue was, well, we can't have a reinstitution of a currency because they don't have a seated government. Well, they have a seated government now. The third argument was, well, we can't have a reinstitution of the dinar because the hydrocarbon law has not been put into force. Well, the president of the Kurdistan Regional Government, Barzani, has been in meetings with Prime Minister Soudani to discuss the full implementation of Article 140 of the Constitution. Now, what is 140? 140 of the Constitution was basically the de-Arabization of Kurdistan. Remember, when Saddam Hussein was in power, he was moving Arab families into Kurdistan, trying to disperse and remove the Kurds. As a matter of fact, many of the Kurds that refused to leave were killed, and you may recall there was one day where over 5,000 Kurds were killed in one day by Saddam Hussein. So 140 basically said that we are going to put Kurdistan back to the Kurdistan that it was prior to Saddam Hussein, but also embedded in 140 is the hydrocarbon law. So implementation of 140 also makes sure that there's a pro rata distribution of the profits from the sale of petroleum, not only to the Kurdistan region, but individual citizens as well. Of course, this was necessary in order to be Article 8 compliant with the IMF. So the HCL's off the table. The next thing we heard was that we cannot have the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar because the Iraqi Iraqi economy is not sufficiently diverse. Too much of the revenue is generated solely from the sale of petroleum. They need to develop agriculture, trade, imports, exports, and all of the above. Well, the Prime Minister Soudani and the governor of the CBI, Galeb, in meetings have been discussing the integration of the Iraqi banking system with the global banking system. This is precisely in order to encourage and facilitate international trade and investment. Now, that's what's necessary for the reinstitution globally, and because they understand that, they're proceeding with that so that they can then reinstitute, and they have in place the things that they need to then move from the reinstitution in country to the revaluation globally. Fifth issue, there's too much stolen Iraqi dinar out there. We can't possibly reinstitute the currency because nefarious people are holding the currencies. Well, of the estimated, and it's trillions of dinar that were stolen, Soudani has already earmarked about 15% of that that's been recovered. But the vast majority of what remains is being collected by the Paris Club, run by the Paris Committee. And basically what the Paris Committee has said is that we have collected a substantial amount of the stolen provisional 3-0 currency. It's in our possession, this laundered currency, and we are prepared to repatriate that money to Iraq, to the CBI, on the condition that they keep their end of the bargain, which is to reinstitute their currency with the expectation of revaluing the currency globally. So we find ourselves in a good position. We continue to move in the right direction. All of the alleged impediments to a reinstitution are being set aside one by one. So that brings us to the various scenarios for the reinstitution and revaluation, and how's this going to occur? Well, there are basically three scenarios. One scenario is a full reinstitution and virtually simultaneously revaluation at $3.22 or higher. That's possible, but in my opinion, that's unlikely. Second scenario is that they reinstitute at a 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar or at a slight premium over the U.S. dollar, the new Iraqi dinar, and then move to a reinstatement. That's a 50-50 shot, but that's certainly possible. Based on the discussions I've had with a number of people, what they anticipate is a gradual reinstitution. That is going from 1460 to 1190, from there to a reinstituted rate 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar, possibly a slight premium over that, and then after a certain amount of time just going to a revaluation. That seems to be the most likely scenario, although I still kind of lean on scenario number 2, which is just to go 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar or perhaps a slight premium over the dollar, and in a not too distant future beyond that to go to a revaluation. So we're in a very good position right now. We're certainly in a better position than we've ever been before. We have the seated government. We have implementation, the process of full implementation of 140, the hydrocarbon law. We have the collection of the provisional 3 zeros, although remember the 3 zeros will not be recognized in country. The Paris Club has evidently collected the vast majority of the illicit 3-0 currency that have been laundered and ferreted out of the country. So things are looking very, very positive. As I said last week, I'm not saying that the revaluation is going to happen at any moment, but I am saying that it could. So that's where we are. Of course, for the seated government, now we're going to have the presentation of the budget. And now with the 140 and the hydrocarbon law looking like it's going to be resolved, we might not only see a budget, but we might see within that budget a new rate. Now, even if we don't see a new rate, a lot of people have said, we cannot, if we don't get the rate before the budget, the rate won't change for another year. I don't believe that to be the case. The optimum situation, in my opinion, would be the exchange rate prior to doing the budget. That would be nice, clean, and neat, but of course Iraq doesn't do anything that way. But irrespective of the rate that's in the budget, that does not mean that rate cannot fluctuate thereafter. So again, I think things are looking really, really good, and at the very minimum, a reinstituted rate would be globally would be $3.22. In my opinion, we'd be much closer to $5, and that's one of the reasons why I've been using $5 as a hypothetical rate. Looking at Basel III compliance and how that works, it seems to me that actually you could argue that even $5 might be conservative. The Kuwaiti dinar, when it reinstituted in the 90s, popped all the way up close to $7 before it fell down to an equilibrium price of about, I think it was about $3.46. So if the Kuwaiti dinar can go north of $6, I see absolutely no reason why that couldn't happen with a dinar. But we're just going to have to wait and see. As people like to say, no one can give you a date or a rate. And, of course, they don't want to signal any of that anyway for reasons having to do with the illicit players involved in the market. So, again, that's all pretty good news. I wanted to share that with you. I managed to get through that. I got, like I said, I got stickums everywhere. I got stuff all over the place. But I want to get into the program that we've put in place to assist those of you that do have currency. For the over 10 years, actually, we've been marketing our Family Asset Protection Trust for Dinarians, but things are unfortunately moving south in this country very quickly. And so by establishing your Family Asset Protection Trust, you're basically exercising your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. And given the high surveillance, high tax state that the left is extremely anxious to put in place, it's important that all American citizens understand why they need to exercise their Fourth Amendment right to privacy and to contract. And the way to accomplish all of that is through the establishment of your Family Asset Protection Trust. Now, I've discussed in the past the various things individuals can establish, those of you that are dinarians, to provide some level of privacy and asset protection, the LLC, the sub-S corporation, family limited partnerships, revocable trusts, all of that. I'm not going to get into that in detail. We've established a package of irrevocable trusts. We've done so because it provides the absolute best bulletproof asset protection and privacy protections available domestically. So I'm going to touch on these benefits, why those of you that are dinarians need to establish your trust prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies, and hopefully, and in my opinion, time is running short to take advantage of this package. But I also want to touch on why this package is important for any American citizen who's fed up with what's going on with the federal government, their intrusion into our personal lives, and what we can do to stop all of this. Now, by establishing our Family Asset Protection Trust package, you're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. Now, if you're a dinarian or you're someone that has a substantial or have an asset that you think is going to increase in value substantially, it's important that you transfer the asset to the trust prior to the appreciation of that asset, not only for tax reasons, but because that asset will not appear if someone pursues you through your Social Security number, because the appreciation of that asset will have actually taken place within the trust. But if you are an individual with a substantial amount of wealth, you want to place that net worth in trust to preserve your privacy and your anonymity for a number of reasons. For example, 1 out of 4 millionaires will be sued in their lifetime. And 40% of those civil suits will be frivolous lawsuits. In other words, these are individuals that are just filing a lawsuit to try to make a couple of bucks. They figure you're going to just pay them off, so they'll just, go on their merry way. But when the assets are in trust, it's very difficult for them to ascertain exactly what you have and how to get at it. That means they're going to need to pay an attorney an upfront retainer. They're certainly not going to do that when they're trying to make a quick buck, so those lawsuits go away. Second reason you'd want to establish this trust package if you're a dinarian is because it'll allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time that these currencies are revalued, and there's many other much more important things you'd rather be spending your time with. And third, the cost of a 6-year IRS audit would be more than the cost of our asset protection trust. So by establishing your trust, you'll avoid all of that. Now, on the other hand, if your trust is enforced and you have assigned your currencies on paper to that trust, you will have transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. First, we know there's less than a 15% chance of an IRS audit if the taxable revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. Third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV, but in order to avoid a substantial 40% gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the USD lump sum after you've negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of the trust with a standard gift letter. But if you're hesitant to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum for any reason, you can give to them through the specially designed gift sub-trust that's part of our package. And because you're gifting through this package, their USD will be protected along with yours. You will be able to then manage, invest, distribute the money to these individuals as you wish. But if you're an American citizen and not a dinarian, this gift trust will allow you to gift currencies or lifetime gifts to individuals like homes, cars, etc., to individuals as you wish, but you will still have control of that asset through the trust. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow you to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. The probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with the probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government will assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. And this would be the case whether you're a denarian or not. Now, this scenario is not only completely and totally unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number two. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving those heirs the very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our family asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. Now, there's one other issue here that I want to mention, and that is that by establishing your family asset protection trust package, you are going to be able to avoid the high tax surveillance state that's being created. It's going to be created through Executive Order 14067, signed into law in February by Joe Biden, supposedly going to be effective in approximately 5 days, which is the beginning of the implementation of the central bank digital currency. With a central bank digital currency, there will be no more physical currency. The Treasury Department will be in complete and total possession of your currency at all times. You can only do one of two things with it. You can purchase some good or service, or you can leave the currency in the federal wallet. You cannot take the currency out and do whatever you want with it. In addition, the federal government will be able to track everything you've done, your expenditures. Well, why would they want to do that? It's because they're going to control what you can and can't buy. They're going to create a CO2 carbon tax. You're going to have to operate under carbon credits. Your ability to purchase certain goods and services are going to be limited or denied if you do not, or you exceed your carbon credit limit. All of these things are happening. When you create a family asset protection trust, you're going to be able to establish other entities in order to operate outside of the Federal Reserve Central Bank digital currency system. So literally, whether you're a have or have not in the near future is going to be based on whether or not you've established the proper protection, like this family asset protection trust, to do everything you can to avoid having to operate under their system. Now, after the revaluation of the dinar and when we stop marketing the trust and we are working solely with the people that have our trust and will be operating with their trust, we'll be able to assist you in specifically the strategies that you can utilize to circumvent the central bank digital currency. Now, the last issue I wanted to mention is the asset protection afforded you if you're a denarian is basically twofold. There's a benefit pre-RV. There's a asset protection benefit post-RV. This is why we established a package of trusts. So let me explain how this is going to work. Pre-RV, the asset protection benefit provided is that you are going to be able to circumvent the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar, you purchase 25 million dinar for $5,000. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust package has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive upfront and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could sue you for is the value of the currency at the time you transferred it out of title and to the trust, i.e. $5,000, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protects you through a legal strategy referred to as segregation of assets. This is why we've established a package of trusts, and I'll give you an example of how it works. Once again, we'll use the same scenario. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary home, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by the initial master trust that you established pre-RV. Now, how does this protect you? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiff would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other net worth and assets are protected in the other subtrusts, i.e. protected from litigation. Why? Because the plaintiffs involved in the accident have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity or person, and that's precisely what these other subtrusts are, separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. So your trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. But these benefits are lost to every American citizen if he is left to operate with the central bank digital currency without exercising his Fourth Amendment right to privacy and to contract by establishing a family asset protection trust and then subsequently utilizing all of the strategies that we're going to employ in order to, as best as possible, operate outside of the central bank digital currency system. Now, there is one other benefit for those of you that have the dinar. Phase 2 of our program is, again, all of the product, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to those of you that do have our trust package. I'll just make mention of one benefit here. We will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held approximately 30 days after the global revaluation of the dinar. Our plan is to have that an in-person seminar in Disney World, Florida, but Disney World is getting a little squirrely with regard to the regulations and limitations of seminars because of, i.e., the COVID situation. So if that does become an issue, we will be doing a DVD in office, and we will have that seminar. Of course, present at that seminar will be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages. Many of our clients have expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts, and we can assist you with the establishment of those entities as well. We'll also have our tax specialists there as well with this newfound wealth, or for those of you that want to legally operate outside of the central bank digital currency system, we will have our tax specialists there and our independent fee-based financial managers to discuss with you the various strategies you can utilize to manage this newfound wealth if you're a dinarian, or to protect what you do have from the digital bank, the central bank digital currency system. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift sub-trust for those dinarians that wish to gift currencies to family and friends and manage and control the post-RV proceeds, which sub-trust can be converted to a standard sub-trust, and then 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold financial or physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this trust package is the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with dinarians, we knew that price tag was going to be unaffordable for too many. So by simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are a number of ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our upfront cost just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay to us under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you, because we want to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the revaluation of the dinar, or for any American citizen prior to the implementation of the central bank digital currency for all of the reasons that we've discussed here today. I want to thank all of you for listening to the call. We are going to go to a Q&A in just a moment, but for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation informational package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 39 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have approximately 80 years' experience in precisely this area, and I know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, this is important because under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And it's at precisely those times that you need and want control that you can lose that control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, and for those of you that simply want to avoid having to operate under the upcoming central bank digital currency system. We will help you in every way that we can to accomplish those personal objectives as we understand them. So thanks so much for listening to our call. I'm going to go to the Q&A here just a moment. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I want to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. You can go to our email, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, or you can go to our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. Contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to send you our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the application for your family asset protection trust, but you're under no obligation to do so. Package has a lot of information about us, about the trusts, about the currencies. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. But if you decide to proceed, you would submit your application and your fee. We'll review the information sent to us, and you should have your trust package prepared and ready for execution within 3 working days. Well, we have some questions in here, so let's go to our first caller here. Looks like, is it 415? Are you there, 415?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Jim? This is Al.
Yes, sir. Big Al.
Another great day to you. Of course, I've been, following with you guys, or just in general, for quite some time. In fact, back to where Shabibi was talking about the implementation of the Iraqi Dinar returning. So my question thoughts are based around the fact that things are shining, like you said, it's coming into a position where it's never happened before in terms of speed, application, and involvement. He spoke that in order for the system to work, it would have to start at the beginning of the year. It can't start at the end of the year, and it can't start at the middle of the year. So being that we're at the end of the year, the beginning of the year is aligning. Also with the Chinese, the eights, all that stuff, it's coming to fruition. And then the full moon, which also has, and those are just like you say, sightful things or signs or whatever. But the Kurdistan region is getting together. That is coming into play. So, like you say, the 140 is kind of making sense or coming to light to where, I mean, there's a time and a space that's all coming into the nucleus.
Well, let me say this. It is true that all these things are happening, and it is possible that they are moving forward simply because, as you're saying, they want to get it done at the beginning of the year. The truth of the matter is that some countries operate on a calendar year, some countries operate on a fiscal year. If you go back and look at the revaluations of currencies over the last 100 years, there are 3 months where it has happened, most usually January, April, and September. And that has to do with the calendar of fiscal year, of the country. So that's what's going on there. But you're right. They've checked. In my opinion, they've checked all of the boxes. That's why I say I'm not saying it will happen tomorrow, but I'm saying it could simply because of where we are right now. So, but whether it's the beginning of the year, the beginning of a fiscal year, the other issue I would say is they have been able in the middle of a year to change the rate. So they went from 11.90 to 14.60. So if they can do that, then they can go from 14.60 to 11.90 to 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar, whether it's January, whether it's April, whether it's September, or whether it's any other month as well. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Now, it's more complicated to do that, and they're going to have to do a lot of calculations and make some changes. But we'll just have to see how it plays out. But optimally, we'd like to see a rate in the budget, and we'll know in very short order if that's the case. Okay?
As well, I think the U.S. Treasury or through that sign is supposed to be making some significant remarks or whatever towards the latter part of this week. So that, too, is a little spice in the pie.
Yeah. That's why I said at the beginning of my call, it's going to be. I got through it. Although I realized I left out a few things I wanted to say. It's just I got stuff coming at me from every direction, and it's hard to try to distill it down into less than an hour. I think people have an attention span of 40 minutes, and so I try to stay within that time frame. But listen, thanks for the call. I got a lot of
appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Our next caller is 619. That's 619. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. It's Eddie. How are you?
Eddie, how you doing?
Excellent, my friend. Excellent. Thanks for all your information. You're always awesome, and just appreciate all the hard work and time you put into this. Hey, I got 2 questions for you, Jim. On the digital side, you mentioned with the trust and stuff of that nature, having the trust, it basically kind of allows us to work within that digital arena and not be as far as controlled so much. Can you kind of go into that and walk us through a scenario, if you can?
Okay, first, when you're operating with the trust, we as American citizens have a Social Security number, but the trust has an EIN number. So they can't necessarily associate you and your Social Security number with the trust, number one. Number two, because you have a trust, you have certain protections pursuant to the Fourth Amendment. It's like an extra layer of protection that the IRS or whomever is involved with you they have to have a reason. My argument is the central bank digital currency is a violation of the Constitution because it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment right. So long as I'm operating as a legal citizen, purchasing goods and services legally, it's none of their damn business. That's my argument. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But if you own assets within the trust, like gold, silver, shares in gold and silver mining companies, real estate investment trusts, in other words, if you make sure your principal is in physical assets, then you're limiting the interest and dividends, which of course would be within the digital currency system, but you've substantially reduced your exposure to them. Then there's the ability to invest offshore, to invest in other currencies that are not digital in nature. So you can be making purchases with foreign currencies through other entities we can create in conjunction with the trust and avoid the digital currency. So there are things we can do. Now, it involves more work, more effort, but after the revaluation of currencies, let's face it, most people's full-time job is going to be managing their wealth, not getting up every morning to go to work. Their job is managing the wealth that they've accumulated. So it's important that we do the things that we can do, and limiting our exposure to any digital currency, in my opinion, is once the digital currency is in place, that's job number one as far as I'm concerned, avoiding it.
Gotcha. All right, question number 2 regards to the dong. Can you fill us in as to you feel that it's going to go shortly thereafter or at the same time as far as exchanging, and what are you hearing on that? I hear a lot of good things about the dong, but just wanted your input.
The dong's been operating in a program rate for decades. Now, I've mentioned this before. In the last few years, and of course their economy is doing well, but in the last few years they have two things going for them. Once they found a massive oil reserve off the coast of North Vietnam, and they have an indigenous plant that is a very good organic sugar substitute. And so those are two things that they can really, really market globally. And in order to market globally, to maximize that, they're going to need to have a global currency. Now, when you couple that with the fact that we are going to Basel III compliance, I think what's going to happen when the dinar doesn't even have to revalue globally. Once the dinar reinstitutes, I think that's going to be a catalyst, and that's going to be a domino effect. And in my view, the first currency that's going to respond to that, in my opinion, is going to be the dong, and that's why the second largest currency I personally hold is the dong.
Okay. Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If I don't talk to you, have a wonderful Christmas.
You too. You too. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 813. That's area code 813.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I understand they're developing or designing and getting ready to print 20,000 dinar notes. If they're getting rid of the 000 notes, why would they be coming out with a 20,000 dinar note? That makes no sense to me, and I've heard it from so many places that I assume it's true.
Well, they're not getting rid of the 25,000 dinar note. So my thinking is that, and actually some of the things I've heard is they're going to postpone that. But let's say hypothetically they're going to do that. Well, that could be a bank-to-bank note. You know, because once they reinstitute, people aren't even going to be using the $10,000 note or arguably even the $5,000 note. All of those notes on the street are going to be reduced to, the 3 zeros will be gone. So if they're producing this, it's either going to be in my opinion, it's either going to be solely a bank-to-bank note, or it's going to be used through the Bank of International Settlements. Internationally, it's not going to be something that's going to be used on the street. But again, I'm hearing that they're going to postpone that. So that's where I stand with that. It's going to go the way of the other. I understand what you mean. Why print a $20,000 note if the 3 zeros are going to be gone, unless it's going to be a bank-to-bank note or used for international transactions?
Okay. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir. Same to you. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. That's my guy Les.
Hey, Jim. Yes, it is. Hi, good afternoon. You got it, man.
Sure.
Good to hear your voice. I have two questions. Thanks. Two questions only. Actually three things. But the HCL, does that have to be the HCL and you mentioned it in your introduction, the auction. Now, are those two things easily stopped so they can mention the HCL or write it up and implement it immediately, and then the auctions are stopped immediately? Is that something that can happen right away, or is that something that has to take the readings?
If the CBI reinstitutes the dinar in country, particularly if it's 1-to-1 with the dollar, with the U.S. dollar, they don't need the U.S. dollar, so they don't need to auction anything.
So that'll cut the auctions out.
Yeah, that doesn't make any. They will need the auctions.
Okay.
And remember, also the auctions was a way to facilitate collection of the 3-0 provisional currency, which most of that in country has already been collected.
So why are they still doing it?
Well, because it's Iraq. There's the saying, there's too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the broth. Well, that's the problem. There's too many agendas. There's too many people. They have tribal issues. They have sectarian issues. They have the pro-Iranian corrupt officials in there. They have other countries that are dabbling in there. It's just a cesspool of corruption, and it just takes a lot to. It's a mess. I mean, Washington D.C. is a mess. Okay, money attracts these people. It just does. It's a magnet. And, it's very difficult over time. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I didn't mention in the call, I'm going to go ahead and waste your time and mention it right now, was the Hamilton Project. And the Hamilton Project was, of course, the preliminary exploration into the implementation of the central bank digital currency. Now, in my view, what they're attempting on the left is basically the death of the republic, and the central bank digital currency is one of the ways they can try to accomplish that. The establishment of this trust is one of the ways to circumvent that. Now, after the Constitutional Convention, Ben Franklin was approached by someone, and they said, well, what have you given us? And his answer was, I've given you a republic if you can keep it. Now, basically what he meant by that is he was astute historically, and he understood that, unfortunately, most republics devolve into tyrannical authoritarian states, and that is exactly what the left in the United States is trying to accomplish, and one of the ways that they're doing it, or attempting to do it, is through the creation of the digital currency, which is absolute control of our lives. That's what it is. So we have mechanisms in place to at least protect us against that. My argument is the digital currency has got to be a violation of our constitutional right to privacy, because they track our purchases. They track how we spend our money. Have we been convicted of a crime? Why are they doing that? That's just my view. And I'm a guy on the right, but I just don't see how that's not a violation of my rights. If I go to the store today and $300, if I go to Walmart and then I go to, buy Christmas gifts that's none of their business at all.
Right.
So that's my view of it. So I think, like I said, there's going to be a movement to get around it. And one of the ways to do it is to establish a trust, to own physical assets, to have as little money as possible in our system or in any central bank system that utilizes a digital currency. There are ways to get around it. It's complicated. It's time-consuming, but it can be done. And for those of us that understand we can get around it, that's what we're going to do.
All righty. And lastly, will any or all of this have to be read in their, their newspaper? Does any of this have to have 3 readings or postings in their newspaper?
Well, the new budget would probably need to go into the paper. I don't know about the 30-day secure. I don't think that's a factor at this point. I mean, they've done so many things this year that they supposedly couldn't do without a seated government. And of course, there are people that don't want it to happen, so they're going to come up with another reason, and it's just going to get ridiculous, But like I said, I still am of the view, not that it will happen at any time, but that it could. And the other way to get around it is if people say, well, it's got to be in there for 30 days or whatever. Well, they say, okay, we'll go from 1460 to 1190, and then after 30 days we'll go 1-to-1. So there's things they can do to circumvent what I think that's just a red herring as far as I'm concerned.
All righty. Well, thanks again for your time, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes,
say hi to the professor, and have a great day.
Will do. Take care.
Right.
Bye-bye now. Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. The things we've discussed here today are of importance. I certainly hope you will contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can contact us by phone or email. We'll get that package out to you as quickly as we can. You can review the package. Contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. Our next call, of course, is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week.